Content warning. So the following episode contains frank discussions concerning trauma resulting from sexual abuse, rape, incest, and domestic violence, as well as the complexities of its depiction in Twin Peaks and the complexities of interpreting David Lynch's intentions with and execution of said subject matter. All right, on with the show. Cinphomaniac is full of spoilers. If the movie's there in the title, we're probably going to say everything that happens in it. So don't fucking listen if you don't want to know.
I'm driving in your car, pretending that relief is down. We're watching all the streetlights fade, and now you're just a stranger's dream. I took a picture from the frame, and now you're nothing like you seem. Your shadow fell like last night's rain.
So Major Briggs and his wife and the faith in Bobby's redemption and resolve is another big piece. We get the chair scene, which includes the chair song, a new piece from Angelo Badalamenti, and we also have Charlotte Stewart, one of her alpha and omega actors, because she's in Eraserhead. Here she is here, and she has this beautiful moment looking in Bobby's eyes. Your father never lost faith in you, Bobby. Briggs' spirit is still with us through Bobby. And just as Mark Frost is obviously still with the show, even though, Don Davis, the great actor who played Major Briggs, is no longer with us. That's why they had to be creative with his usage, of course. And the note concealed within shows Twin Peaks and what symbol above the peak? Judy's symbol. This is the path to the end game, to closure. That's why we're getting it. The plot that Briggs put into motion is to get us to Judy. It also has the number, to make this point even more clear, 253, the number of completion, right? 253 adds up to 10. Another source of love that still remains is Lucy and Andy, the relationship. They're pretty much the same. Lucy, being from the 90s, still doesn't understand cell phones. And we do get a big payoff to this, of course, in the finale. They're just mostly about their kindness. They're trying to please each other by finding the right chair, another version of the chair scene, right? But it's really notable, in addition to that big Lucy payoff that I mentioned, the way David Lynch is also like, no, Lucy and Andy matter too, so we're going to give them plot, and we're going to give them action. Andy is the one chosen to receive the fireman's message in part 14. And after that, Andy, very cool, very cool thing, where it's Andy who gets to now all of a sudden act assertive and wise, right? He sees the entire origin in part 8 and Fire Walk With Me in the future in part 17. And why is he chosen? He's chosen for his kindness. It was Andy that wept for Laura. He dives in and takes a hold of NATO upon finding her at the Jackrabbit's Palace. He's always looking out for people. He's always caring. So Dr. Amp, he's a big populist conspiracy theorist and self-help guru. But despite his rhetoric and the negativity he's projecting into the air, he's sounding an alarm for smoke where there is fire and shining a light, his cosmic flashlight. But he's also selling snake oil. Fake golden shovels, right? They're just shovels spray painted gold. They're not real gold. Note that he's still Dr. Jacoby, right? With his 3D glasses on. He has 3D vision. The original idea with Jacoby and the 3D glasses is he's someone who can see what's hidden from others, the extra dimension. The complexity in Laura Palmer, the complexity in Bobby, etc. With no Laura, though, now, and a career ended by the revelations of his incredibly unethical and criminal behavior concerning Laura, let's not forget that. He's another one of these adult men sleeping with a teenage girl. Kobe's 3D vision has to be used elsewhere now. So, not to people who need to be seen in a personal way, but to the horrors of the world writ large, right? That's where the accuracy comes from. But this is not what he was meant to do. And so his solutions and targets are just more products from the thing in the air, right? It's the capitalist realism. Self-help consumerism and personal values is how you'll save yourself. That's the only way. There's no other structural or systemic change that can happen. Everything must come through capitalism and consumerism, right? So that's the only way to save yourself, is just to buy self-help books and read them and fix yourself. Take personal responsibility. Nothing about building or uniting counter institutions to power, right? So in that sense, Dr. Amp is kind of like a Dr. Jordan Peterson, which makes Lynch or myself Slavoj Žižek, which is very flattering for me. Notice that his listeners, Nadine with one eye, right? Jerry, very high and confused. These are people who are not seeing the whole picture or having their senses diluted or etc. They're the people that are most prone to the thing in the air that Dr. Amp is putting out there. Another thing about Dr. Amp is he hits pretty different in 2021, right? Because now in the vaccine era, he keeps talking about health and bodily fluids, like, you know, going back to Dr. Strangelove. And when I think of this, like, loud, brash, populist guy yelling at a microphone who's skeptical of vaccines and stuff in the body, big pharma, all that stuff. I mean, it's a major Jimmy Dore vibe. Anyone who knows who Jimmy Dore is will surely get what I mean. But Nadine, being fans, has had 25 years. Let's talk the Ed, Norma, Nadine, or what I call the what is it? Fuck. The double R redemption. That's what it is. It is.
That is what it is.
That is what it is. And it's important. It's obviously, like, I think when people first saw this, and it is definitely that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, in some ways, like, what I'm going to get to the point of it is to be this. It is fan service. It is like the one thing that they went out of their way to do to, like, resolve something that was left unresolved from the original in some major way. But again, the only reason David Lynch is in any way interested in doing that, I think of course he ships Norma and Ed anyway too, but I think it's because of the reason I'm going to get to. It's what Ed's meant to represent. It's what Norma's meant to represent. And it's what Nadine's meant to represent. And it's what that relationship and that change that we witness is meant to represent, and what it's meant to even warn us about.
Warning
in
us.
terms of what's to come, because this happens in part 15, you might know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into it. So first off, and we've talked about this before, but just to make it really clear so everyone understands, like, Norma herself, leader of the double R, is the epicenter of Twin Peaks in terms of what Twin Peaks is meant to represent with that love. The cherry, she is the bringer of the cherry pie and coffee, right? She's famously Miss Twin Peaks. You see, it's quite literal there. And, you know, it should also be noted that Norma was played by Peggy Lipton, who we've lost since then. So, I mean, if David Lynch didn't do this when he did it, we would never have gotten this.
Right.
There's a lot of incredible. I mean, this is true across the board, but man, that might be the honestly one of the biggest ones. Is just that, like, that just would have just been too heartbreaking. So, so she's Mr. Peaks. She's still there. You'll notice the double R is one of the few things. There's like a little changes here and there, like some modern updates, but like, it's the same, just like the actual location is the same, going all the way back. And that's partly because of the Twin Peaks fans. They have like, oh shit, they've turned this into like a tourist destination, right? When what happens is you have Shelley, you have Norma, and even Heidi. Yes, Heidi's back too. And they're all still there, exactly where we left them, serving love and balancing the lives of the beautiful, ordinary, wonderful people. Because when we see the double R,
and Heidi's high-pitched giggle is just...
Well, she has, like, you notice how she has like cornrows now?
Yeah. Well, I think she, if I was watching, I was like, I think cool. She used to have bangs and now she's got different, I mean, obviously everybody's a little bit different, but I did kind of think that they would do the same, try to do the same hair for everybody as like a nod, but she got a different style. So
yeah.
Good for her. No,
it's cute. And you know, it's really about just like this idea of this community that we keep talking about and the ordinary people there. You see them all. They're just regular, ordinary people, but they can come here and be a part of this community and get the love they deserve, the nourishment they deserve. And it's that sense of personal care, not like the modern idea, but just like feeding the town. It doesn't matter if you can't afford it. We see it with Miriam. They're like, oh, her next stuff's on the house. Like they're always looking out for these people, and the door is always open. This place is 24 hours. You can never stop. It's very notable when we see it later, right? At the end of the finale, it's not open. And it's like, it's like this idea that they really value the people in the community. They know who Miriam is. They know what she matters. Every single person matters, right? And we get our first introduction to Ed in the new series later on in like part 13. And it's notable. I think Ed has always represented this, as we're talking about, but notice how Ed has his hair styled now?
Yeah.
It's a lot like a certain Mr. David Lynch's hairstyle, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah. I guess it is kind of, well, I know he's got older, so it's turned white. So
it's turned white, but like it's very much like David Lynch gave him his barber. And notice Ed's pickup truck. Ed's pickup truck is literally solid gold.
Oh my God.
Solid gold.
Isn't it?
Yes. Yes. So Ed is meant to represent David Lynch. And Norma's meant to represent Twin Peaks. So the love between Norma and Ed is the love between David Lynch and his creation, which we've talked about. David Lynch was heartbroken for 25 fucking years, feeling betrayed and hurt because the fans, Nadine, have been abusing him and been
she's the
like
one
neglecting
Twin
him.
Peaks is the one that got away. The one who never let go. Twin Peaks was the one who got away, and stubborn negative Nadine has been preventing us from finding her. But as we see in this scene, it's ultimately Nadine, just like it was ultimately the fans, that allowed David Lynch to have Twin Peaks back. But notice how this exchange goes down, right? So Nadine, just to catch her up on it, what's happened to Nadine in 25 years? She got her money by selling the silent drapes, just so we talked, just like she told Ed. It's like, oh, Ed, we're going to be rich. We don't see that she's necessarily rich, but you get the path that she has her business. It works. Notice how the store has drapes all around it, drapes on the door. It lets no light in whatsoever. It's completely separate from the light of the outside world, right? And what is Nadine hooked on? She's hooked on watching Dr. Amp, aka Dr. Jacoby. It's the energy for me. It's not necessarily, that he's got this crazy message or this kind of out there message. It's the way that he's delivering it with like that kind of angry, loud, condescending, energy, this like anarchist energy that he's coming. I'm like, whoa, Jacoby is starting a cult.
The cult's already going, and Nadine's part of it. That's the point.
Nadine's got the golden shovel. She's in the cult.
So let's talk about this, because like there's a couple points of comparison I would make with Dr. Amp that are notable. I think one you pointed out we pointed out to each other was, and I think this one gets brought up a lot because everyone at this point knows who this is, but Alex Jones and that kind of whole InfoWars type conspiracy theory stuff. And I think that's definitely in there, but I think that what Mark Frost and David Lynch have created with this character is intentionally a little bit more broad than that. I think the intention was to be a little bit more broad there, a little bit harder to pin down politically. Ironically, since 2017, now in 2021, there's very much this exact character. Dr. Amp is a populist conspiracy theorist and self-help guru, legitimate to what Dr. Amp is doing. And it's why people are responding to him, because there is a lot of smoke. There is a lot of negativity. There is a lot of like poison and corruption.
What's his last name? Sorry, Dr. what?
Dr. Amp is the character. Dr. Jacoby's obviously the real person.
Right.
His on-screen persona is called Dr. Amp, like amplify.
No, like ampere, like sound waves.
So the ultimate point is that Ed, now with Nadine's blessing, is able to go be with Norma. And though Norma almost doesn't, though, get with him at first, like she's like kind of rejecting him at first split second, because she has to go do what? Talk to her current boyfriend, who's representative of the greedy capitalist, the network, who's trying to keep her and turn her into a crappy sellout revival instead of the real Twin Peaks, right? But even that can't stop the real Twin Peaks from coming back to her love to Ed, to David Lynch, because the love that she has for her customers, her patrons, her citizens, her fans, and her integrity as a show can't be stopped by greedy capitalists. So Norma goes to bed with the Otis Redding song playing. She's finally back in Lynch's arms. Shelley cries out all her tears of joy, and we get our big happy ending. And that's how it all ended, right? Just the big happy ending, of course. Turning back to the Dougie side of, well, the love and kindness, now is a good time to talk about some of my favorite characters from our turn. Probably my favorite new characters other than Janie E. is the Mitchum brothers, Rodney and Bradley, right? Played by Robert Knepper and Jim Belushi. I think are both quite great in this and perfectly cast in a weird way. So how do we first meet the Mitchum brothers? Well, they run the Silver Mustang Casino, which means casino, Silver Mustang, bad fate, another bad intention place. They're mobsters, they're gangsters, they're violent criminals. They want to kill Dougie. They want to kill Dougie because from their perspective, Dougie's ripping them off, not only when he wins all the jackpots, but he's part of Lucky 7 Insurance, and he's framed by Anthony as the reason that they've lost their money, right? They didn't get their claim filed. The thing that twists that, of course, is Lucky Dougie happens to have Cherry Pie love with him, just like Bradley Mitchum dreamed of. And we know there's no coincidences. Bradley dreamed of this because the magician deemed it so. And Dougie had the pie because the magician or Mike deemed it so that he would have the pie, right? It's all plot engine, but ultimately for it to be a force of good in the world. To teach the Mitchum brothers not to kill Dougie, but to value Dougie. And immediately the heel turn is happening. And it feels perfect. It's like he all of a sudden comes in, he's got pies for like $30 million. He's like, I love this guy. It's like, boom. And this is in part 11, which is honestly one of my favorite episodes of the Twin Peaks period. Easily one of the best. And the way it ends, man. Now they love Dougie, and their love, magnified by their own power, actually, becomes a major force of good in the world. They hook up Sonny Jim, Dougie's family set for life. They're committed to being boys now. They're still gangsters, but they're good boys. They're balanced. They have hearts of gold. And as Kitty says, they really do. Right? So let's talk about Kitty. Kitty, played by Amy Shields, is really great in the part. She's sweet. Like David says, I find her to be granulated happiness. She and her fellow arm candy are the companions of the Mitchum brothers, right? So they're the companions of violent gangsters, but they represent sweetness, love, and warmth with handmade and homemade meals. They're motherly. They're the Vegas equivalent of Norma, right? So then just the fact that they're these good intention with these negative, at least at the start, is of itself a form of balance, right? Now, the fact that they're all good intention, only care about the eyes and the love and etc., they have no interest and give no attention to the Mitchum brothers are doing their usual criminal business. This is why when they're in the back scheming and trying to do stuff with Anthony, Candy completely ignores them. Candy only gives attention to good and home-oriented things. Food, safety, giving gifts, comfort, like air conditioning, right? Etc. It's not unlike the way Gordon Cole always hears Shelley perfectly. It's not because she was Telly, because it's Telly and it's at the double R. She's talking about what? Cherry pies and love, not murder, rape, and the other crime that goes immersed in all day. When Candy swats the fly, she's swatting a fly, literally trying to crawl into Rodney Mitchum's mouth, and she hits it with a TV remote. TV in the hands of love, right? Just as Twin Peaks is intended to be, to stop Frogmoth from getting into us through the sex in the air. Again, when I talk about part 11, so special is that whole entire hope of Dougie's blessings, right? We get a new piece about Elementary score, heartbreaking, beautiful piano piece, right? You see it being played live, and they get into the credits, and we get that return of the little old lady who her life now changed. I hope you realize the special person you are dying with. And, to the Mitchum brothers. And it's all of a sudden cheers to Dougie. They really do. Saying thank you. This is the warmth we need in the world. And we get that great one where Giovanni's like, pie is so damn good. He clicks on for a second. Damn good. That's right. Cherry pie, man. That's the secret recipe. This is in the scope of the entire Jones family redemption story. We have Janie, who's the perfect balance of that sweet motherly and that fierce side, defending your family, defending your children. Dougie being basically another child of her way. We are the 99%. And it's a sign of what this is really trying to contend with the Jones family and their crisis before Dougie's good fortune fixes it is meant to represent. It's like, we are living in a dark age. People could have actually, what am I doing? This is Janie's quote. We are living in a dark age where people can have so little compassion for the suffering of others. So Janie E. literally saying the thesis of the sickness in the air, what's wrong with society, right? Now, another notable point is sort of Jones' family arc is Dougie springing into action, right? Now, obviously, this is a net good. It's another good fortune thing that connects Janie to Dougie, but in practice, what we're really witnessing here? We're witnessing an act of violence, and this the arm pops out. I'm talking about to clarify when this fight attacks Dougie, right? The arm pops up down. He's like, squeeze his hand off. Why wants more graphic violence for TV, for entertainment? Because he's the god of the TV. And that's why Dougie, and the reason he springs into action there is his ability to do that is because ultimately Dougie's responsive to only the plot, but just the very nature of the beast of TV. It's like, hey, you can be soulless, but you are still a vessel for potential violent conflict. I mean, Mr. Bob is with Mr. C, which means with Cooper, which means Bob Dougie, right? All the attention from violence is right there. Now, I alluded to that this also does have the good ultimate net effect, furthering connection of love and falling in love. Are we falling in love? Theme, right? With Dougie. And it's just great and a very, very humorous way to get horny Naomi back again. And it's just this idea that, hey, is more affection producing and being a bringer of good fortune. She says, when she's like leaning up to her, I think actually in part 50, oh, Dougie, it's like all our dreams are coming true. Exactly. And that's when what happens? You're in part 15. Cooper is able to wake up and we get the return of classic. Talk about the big one, Kate, right? Everyone's always just the night at air. Everyone's been talking about it, and it's the thing that sticks out about the return probably more than anything else other than the ending, and even the ending in some cases. I'll say that it is mostly worth it, or entirely worth it. Part 8 is straight up, to my mind, for my money, it's greatest hour television ever. And that night, man, it aired was like kind of rapture. You get your origin very epic. You get an experimental film. You get David Lynch's take on B movie or kind of all wrapped in one, and it's like feels like not to say exclusively dark, but it's like dark Lynch all the way. Is that pure? This is again an example of that pure heroin David Lynch we've been told we were gonna get, right? You start out with the long drive at night of Mr. C. Ray. Mr. C gets shot dead. The woodsman come out. They get the Moonlight Sonata, slowed down, blood ritual, the Bob, the death bag, if you will, all that. And you cut to the roadhouse, and you get 9 Inch Nails. And Reznor and Atticus Ross vibes score hard. She's gone away. Laura is gone. The day she died. The day Twin Peaks died. Right? So let's really get into these lyrics because they're quite fast. They're going to come up in a very specific way later on. The lyrics themselves are not only about Laura, of course, but they're about her loss. They're about the loss of the show. And they suggest what will follow from that loss. Coming still. Judy. I can't remember what she came here for. I can't remember much of any anymore. She's gone. She's gone away. A little mouth opened up inside. Yeah, I was watching on the day she died. Keep licking while skin turns black. Huddle on the length, but can't get the feeling back. She's gone. She's gone. She's gone away. And from that industrial, dark, crazy operatic performance, we get fade out. We'll go back to Mr. C resurrect himself with the blood ritual. Then fade out again. July 16th, 1945, White Sands, New Mexico. I mean, the second I saw it, I was like, oh, fuck, the rumors were true. I think we're literally about to see an atomic bomb go up. And this is a masterpiece shot. I couldn't have ever imagined it be so amazing as it is, right? This long, giant scope aerial. As the bomb goes off, the mushroom cloud erupts. You get Trinity for the victims of Hiroshima. Fly through it. You go into the mushroom cloud, the ultimate black fire of negative intentions, mass destruction, death, violence, man's greatest sin. And you keep going deeper, going to the subatomic particle world. And this is where you get these liquidy, like kind of Trumbull style effects and particle effects, etc. From there, you feed into the convenience store. We literally see the convenience store, something we have not seen before. The outside at least. You see the stairs up, but no actual second floor. So the stairs lead where? Above the convenience store, but it's pure air. And whoosh, the smoke, the stutter, the spring frame, the jolting. It's like electric stutters, right? With the sound, switching everything. And the women appear. Black smoke of black fire personified. Shh. After that, you get the mother shot, the literal mother shot. The experiment. Judy vomits out this giant stream of garmimosia, and we see one of the big seeds, the blood, the death bat. Bob born, or rather, Bob is now inevitable. The A-bomb forever changed the thing in the air. It brought the paranoia, it brought the fear. Bob became inevitable, but it took, a while. We'll get to that. But even deeper in the subatomic, because after we go through that, we go deep. The subatomic is the golden glue, and within that, the purple ocean, unified field, zero, non-existent, where all things begin and all things return. The castle on the purple ocean sits, right? We talked about like a tea kettle, essentially, and it's the castle coffee pot. It's the castle of the fire, the god of film. So the inside is an old movie palace. It's forever in the past, and it's in the black and white, right? He passed in black and white, where film was projected on a big screen, and sound came from records on or from magnetic strips of the film soundtrack. So who is the woman listening to the recording on the ring? Senorita Dido, as the critics refer to her. She's the film strip, human form, made of silver highlight crystals. Why she's in the spark dress. Then the SOS comes in, and the fireman realizes he's needed. Quite sure is the same noise the elevator Eraserhead. So the net connection right away to Eraserhead, and it's like this very alarming sound, just like going up into the home. And Eraserhead was an alarming event. So is now the coming of Bob, right? So again, the sound still means the same thing. He passes by his percolator power plant, good intention to electricity, right? The coffee, the power, the fuel. Of course, the good fire the fireman brings to the world. The fireman then sees the film on the projector screen replayed what has happened on Earth, the birth of Bob. And that's when we start to get Angelo's big new piece of score kick in. And the fireman floats. Dido, his film strip, walks in with the light of the projector beam shining right through the back of her. And then the gold energy, the purest, most powerful intention conscious begins to emerge from his mind to birth his solution to the threat on Earth. The golden orb floats down to Dido. She holds it. What is it? Let me see. Laura. I mean, I fucking bawled. Honestly, bawled the first time I see it, as I still want to do, tear up. Because even with conscious understanding, I knew it all made sense now. That the power, the emotion, Laura is one. I always knew that. I always paid attention to the lady intros. And so I was like, that's it. I knew. She's the counter to Bob. Boom, 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 boom. Dido then sends the orb into the machine that then put out to the projector and to the other side, into the world. And from there, fade out. And then you get what became of the A-bomb 9 years later, 1956, right? So now you're in the mid-50s. In the middle of everybody tuning out, pretending, pretending like everything's fine, pretending like the worst sin had not been committed, pretending like all the past violence of the wars behind us. It's good, bright, suburban, middle-class America. Everyone's well cared for. There's upward mobility, etc., etc., etc. But it's mostly a lie, or at least a half-truth. And that's rotten egg. rotten egg containing the Frogmoth, a monster born from the sickness that came with the bomb, finally gestated, hatches out on a full moon night in this New Mexico. And we cut to the young girl, just hitting puberty, walking with the young boy. It's innocent. She finds a penny. Good luck. He literally tells us it's good luck. She has good intentions. This little young girl has good intentions and good luck. But this girl is Sarah Palmer. From pure air comes down the woodsman, ready to send his message, looking for light. He resembles a soot-covered Abraham Lincoln, the man on the penny. His bad intent, black fire, evil electricity, bad luck. So the good of the whatever penny Sarah found cannot outweigh this. And then that's when you get this, what I referred to this 50s horror movie kind of vibe that Lynch perfectly executes here. Meanwhile, Sarah Palmer on her side has her first kiss, heads into her house. She's playing it cool, but the truth is, as soon as she sits in her bed, she's thinking about what a magic moment as the radio comes on. Meanwhile, the woodsman finds his light, the radio station. My prayer, the Platters. Right? Another 50s classic song gives you this montage of wholesome 50s life. Everything, including the Sarah dreaming out of her bed about the kiss, right? When the twilight is gone, you come into my heart. Like, when it falls, you come in. What happens when night falls? Dark comes, you in. Well, it should be love, but really, it's darkness, cloaked in love, deceiving, telling you to go to sleep, relax, everything is all right. Remember, Roy Orbison dreams, go to sleep, everything is all right. Everything in heaven is fine, or Razorhead. Even every little star in Mulholland Drive is this thing of like, don't worry about the trauma that just happened to me in the green room. Like, I'm going to sing a 50s doo-wop and just things great, right? No. They're lies. And they hurt and damage us because they cause us to avert our eyes and let the darkness in, which is what the woodsman tells us. He finally, this is where we get it. And note the way when he kills these people, he's cracking their heads like they're rotten eggs. And the song cuts, stat, everybody's listening attention called. This is the water, this is the well. Drink full and descend. The horses bite of the eyes, dark within. Everyone who hears collapses into slumber. The thing in the air has arrived. It put the world to sleep. Just like the little horse comes to adult Sarah when she takes Rufy and sleeps so her husband can rape her daughter. Young Sarah, too, falls into slumber. At which point the Frogmoth crawls into her mouth. Forever now will she nurture it, averting her eyes, and therefore allowing the dark to grow within. In her soul, in her house. It is in our house now. The ceiling fan will sin. Judy within. The woodsman turns to the desert. Credits start rolling. Hear a hoarse neigh. And electricity crackles as young Sarah lies asleep at night. Everything you need to know about Twin Peaks is in this one episode. A, right? And the entire thesis statement by way of the origin tale, right? The internet just fucking explodes that night that this aired. Everyone will ever remember. Anyone who was watching or paying attention to the return will remember that this episode. You get the fucking Matthew Lillard Comic-Con then on the next week. Part 8, right? That's crazy. Now let's walk through Briggs's plan, because it's very important to just kind of get those plot points straight, but also set up this idea that plot to get Judy let trap for Mr. C. The parallel is all there, right? So you have Cole, Cooper, Cooper, and Briggs. They made a secret plan to find Judy. In other words, director, writer, co-writer, audience. We're all in this together. So the three of them plant a secret in the chair, Briggs plants a secret in the chair, knowing that Bobby would be there one day in the future as a lawman to message and get Nate by going to grab its pals, right? Cooper's doppelganger, Mr. C, exited the Red Room in Cooper's place back in the 90s. He went to see Briggs' outpost. His outpost then burned down in a fire, no bodies were recovered, and Briggs was assumed dead, and Mr. C. Cooper was never seen or heard from ever again by anyone in Twin Peaks. Presumably, Briggs escaped the fire, which was caused by Mr. C, forced Briggs to help him find Judy, but Briggs knew this was not the right Cooper. So Briggs then goes to Jack Rabbit's palace and uses a portal to escape firemen. From there, is able to jump 25 years ahead into the future. And that's where, because again, everything on the other side is tethered to time. That's where he meets with Bill. They had learned rumors of the, quote, zone and an entry point to the other world, and then that's what led them to be in position to meet Briggs. Briggs presumed had been with Jeffries, a.k.a. the plot device's help, planting rumors of the zone online to make contact with people who would enlist him, who he could enlist to help him find the coordinates. They kill these coordinates to lay the Mr. C, right? So Briggs asked them to find the coordinates he needed to trap Mr. C. They go get them, and Ruth and Bill. But then at that moment, when they give it to Briggs, Ed separates when his body floats up, right? That's how it ends up where it is in part 3. The wood attack, and that's Ruth killed. Her head is open. Then Mr. C basically, in a way, try to figure out how to get the coordinates, lays it up and loops it in Hastings' wife, James Hastings, essentially, for the kill. And then send Ray to try to get it from Ruth, but he's already been trying to get it from Ruth. But now Ruth's dead. Now he needs Ray for the coordinates, right? So ultimately, what is trying to do with the coordinates? Mr. C is trying to use the coordinates because he thinks the coordinates will tell him where Judy is. And we literally see this all going back to the finale. Going to the finale, we see that where he expected to go when he arrived at the fireman's was what on the projector screen is the Palmer. That's Judy. The Palmer is literally Judy. So in other words, he's getting what he wants. Briggs's trap literally gets what he wants. Now, obviously, they changed Judy House to Twin Peaks Surf Station because Briggs's plan, Cooper's plan, and Gordon's plan requires something else. So in other words, these are competing forces working for the same thing that are depending on each other in ways that one side is a little bit less caught. In other words, Mr. C wants to get right to Judy, so he wants to get right to the Palmer house, but that's not actually how it works. Briggs and Cooper and Cole have this same exact goal. Their plan is the more fleshed out one. What Cooper's having is faulty plan so that they can enact their true plan. So they trap Mr. C, send him to Sheriff, and they're able to then bring out the events that will lead to the closure and giving Cooper the key to go through the door, etc. Right? Now, one of the things that helps us lay out this whole trajectory before we get there is, of course, Hawk's map, right? It explains almost everything just with just symbols on it, right? And he talks through it. The corn, the fire, the electricity, the black fire, the Judy symbol. So in reference to the Judy symbol, what does he tell? Like, you don't ever want to know about that. And it's like the deputy who interrupts in there. Hey, do you want to check out my new car? It's just like a little symbol. Hey, it's TV commercial break. Obviously being on time and premium, it doesn't have actual commercials, but it's just a reminder. Hey, it's a TV show. There should be commercials. Commercials rule the airway. That's the only reason TV exists, is to serve commercials. We get also, of course, throughout this return journey, a little more insight into this Rose Task Force and Dr. Tammy. It's really just kind of an interesting sort of lore or clue context. Notice that the room has red drapes when this happens. They're first revealing this. It's like you're getting a little behind that curtain into that between world to get some answers, actually, right? Get a little bit of closure here. You also have, in part 15, I believe, the great arm wrestling scene. Or maybe it's part 14, or is it part 13? It's whatever, yeah, whatever. I think maybe it's 14. But you get the arm wrestling with Mr. C when he gets to the arm. The world of truck drivers. Everyone in there is part of this world of the truck drivers, kind of almost cartoonish. Demonstrates his power, right? He's fueled by us, or he has this unspeakable desire for Bob and for Judy. So he plays out the violence, draws it out, makes it really fun entertaining by drawing out the wrestling match. Boom, boom, slams the thing, big violent punch. See, Bob and Judy gets you one step closer to closure. Gets you one more Gamboa for the purpose of attainment. It's also where you see Ray is an agent of Philip Jeffries, aka the plot machine, the plot. Ray has the ring, the plot armor, and dying, he puts it on, which marries him to the arm, and this returns the ring to the bedroom upon Ray's death, where his plot installation, essentially, as dated by the plot, Jeffrey, the room, etc., has ended. He served his purpose. Really not any different from a Tulpa. He was manufactured for a particular purpose by the plot, and now his plot's over, ring returns to the room. Also, Richard, this is how Richard sees his father, and we get their little reunion in the subsequent part in part 15, and then in part 16 we get his death, which gives Mr. C a really chilling way to say goodbye, my son. Yeah, fucked up end and a fucked up life, and obviously Richard is vile and bad as they come in that point, but I think it's to challenge us to really understand and sympathy for the fact the kid was obviously not treated well growing up, given the circumstances of his birth and the condition of his mother, etc. It's notable that is also reflected where we first meet Richard is the Roadhouse. So a lot of people have been perplexed, confused about all these red herrings and sort of hanging chaff of the Roadhouse. Well, the Roadhouse, just like it was in the series, is symbolic of TV itself, and so the Roadhouse is symbolic of TV now, and the modern rot that's TV, David Lynch's perspective, trashy, violent, negative things in the air because in the air has had 5 more years to only get more and more anxious, and like kind of almost like Lynch's remedy is that, oh, you would keep waiting for closure. Well, this is Twin Peaks not getting closure. That's what we're here for. Judy doesn't always get to win because we're here. And look, it is the red herrings of it are very intentional. It's the show within the shows, right? All these little Roadhouse stories are shows within the show. They're shows that Audrey, as we're going to talk about, wants to be on, right? So the fact Audrey's bringing it up, it serves the one end of keeping our interest on them to a certain extent, giving us these red herrings, but also serving the particular purpose of making us understand that this is Audrey's writing these stories at the Roadhouse. That's where she wants to go. She wants to go back on TV. But we'll get to that in a moment. Notable, when you're thinking of this trashy, negative thing, this black fire, is when you get the first Roadhouse story in part 9 with the one with Sky Fair and got the nasty armpit rash that she keeps scratching, right? That episode ended of Simone's performance of their song "Violent Yet Flammable World." I'll repeat, a violent yet flammable world. I mean, David Lynch picks songs for a reason, right? Similarly, we get the Monica Bellucci story for a particular, which is to get us to understand the nature of this show and Twin Peaks as dreams within dreams, and the ways past and future are linked. So it's this linkage, this line, this threshold that exists between reality and the dreaming of Twin Peaks. It's where Lynch and Gordon Cole meet. Monica and her friends, Lynch's friend, life, outside the Paris art exhibit where Lynch had actual art, and she asks him, like the dreamer dreams, and then lives inside the dream. Who is the dreamer? It's where past and present are meeting. I saw myself from long ago, and we flash back into fire walk, right? Dreams contain hidden truth. Jeffries points to Cooper. What do you think is there? Doppelgangers, etc. In dreams, all time is accessible. That's how we're able to time travel. In dreams, we can pass between worlds. Red River, convenience store, etc. It's all fucking moving. In dreams, we dreaming, right? There's dreams with dreams. In dreams, we dream of the other world. So in reality, we dream of Twin Peaks by watching it, or just literally about it. In Twin Peaks, they dream of reality by dreaming Red Room or entering the Red Room, or eventually crossing the threshold at 430 miles. We dream of a world that may dream of us. And that's why finale has a sort of us. So it's all deliberate foreshadowing. But who is the dream, right? Exit on 15, of course, actual exit of Cooper to bring back, or Dougie to bring back Cooper Classic. And how does it start? With Dougie watching Sunset Boulevard, David Lynch's favorite movie, like we talked in Mulholland Drive. It's like, hey, Gordon Cole. Suddenly, Dougie remembers that he's in part 15 and that he can use outlet 50. He looks over the outlet, sticks the fork, and zaps himself. We also, at the end of that episode, from there, get the death of Margaret Lanterman. She was kind of the one holding out the light, you could say, for Tweaks to return. And now Classic's return, so it's like her time has ended. And she says there's some fear letting go. And it's really just moving and fitting at just the legend, not only the log lady, but of course of Catherine Coulson herself, who legitimately lost to cancer at the moment. And, you know, we talk about there's no Twin Peaks without David Lynch. There's almost no David Lynch, at least going back to the origin, without Catherine Coulson. David Lynch is here now. He's an artist. He's all these things, but she was at the start of his film career, instrumental in him making that film. And she's been with him ever since, been supportive, and appeared as the log lady and made that character beloved, was the deliverer of the messages when it was dark with those log lady angels. So moving on from one legend that's part of Twin Peaks now to the biggest legend, we gotta talk about Diane.
Just to kind of do a small aside really quickly.
No, go ahead.
Kind of a weird observation. Obviously, I'm a physics student. I'm a fan of science, and I think my mind just went to this place because I've been doing a lot of physics lately, but the sound. So do you remember when they were looking for the buzzing sound, right? In the Horne, Ben Horne, and
we're the balance.
Yeah, so they hearing that sound. So that in some religions is called the Om. Mm-hmm. Right? The Om, the sacred sound that encompasses all other sounds within it. Mm-hmm. But the Om in physics is actually the measure of a resistance of electricity.
Right. No, I knew that.
And I think but I think there's got to be some kind of connection here. Dr. Amp, the Om sound and electricity are all present in the return, but especially in a couple of the later episodes. But also that I think that calming sound is what makes Ben Horne make the right choice and do the right thing instead of trying to make a move on Ashley Judd. He doesn't. He makes a good choice for once. And I think it's because, or I think Lynch is wanting us to think it's because we don't have the sound of electricity at that moment. We have the sound of the Om.
Well, okay. So you're obviously speaking in terms of you're using, definitely, I agree, you're using the right symbols here, talking about the right sorts of things. Do I think it's having that impact on Ben the way you're saying? Maybe, but if it does, it's for a particular reason. So what the sound you're hearing, and you hear it in the Great Northern, like you said, with Ben and Beverly, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about this when we did our episode of Twin Peaks before. That's the same sound that David Lynch played in the international pilot during the ending sequence of confronting Bob in the basement of the hospital, the boiler room. Mm-hmm. We find out that this sound, when we see James Hurley, now a security guard at the Great Northern, because Ben and Beverly don't know where the sound's coming from. So it's really just to set up the idea of the sound. Now, where I think you might potentially be onto something with Ben, there's a part of me that doesn't like what you're saying, just because to me, the point of Ben is to not give him that out, because Ben is a character who is suffering for the sins he did. Right? No, Ben is suffering for the sins he did. His moving away from Beverly is him trying to punish himself. And honestly, if there's anybody who deserves to be punished themselves, though I don't believe in either of those two words,
I think
it's Ben. So
I think I might agree with you, except later on, he gets negative news and he's around the electricity. And then he immediately puts his head up and says, "Do you want to go out with me?"
Well,
you know what I mean?
Okay. But so when I talk about,
the energy around him is different.
Let me say
so now he's giving into the evil,
the part
to the electricity.
The part that of what you're saying, because remember, this is really important. Electricity is not just evil. We see more of it used for that.
Right?
It's good or bad, right? The note that I'm talking about, that it's used at the end of the international pilot, and it's coming from the basement with Bob, and then we hear it again coming from the door in the Great Northern. This is later the door Cooper will go through, right? The reason Cooper goes to that door, the reason that door is there at all, is because it is the source of that noise. What is that noise? The noise is the balance note, or that's at least what I'm calling it. And what the idea is, from what I understand, from what I've been told and what I've read, the sound between notes.
Yes.
So in other words, it's like this empty space. It's the non-existent sound. It's the sound of zero, the sound of completion. And that's why
that's again why I think that's again why I think he picks a sound that reminds us of the Om, because it is all the sounds and none of the sounds at the same time.
Right, exactly.
It's the sound of the universe in the sense that it's everything and nothing.
Everything, exactly. So this whole idea, this is what I'm saying, the note a lot, along with several other things in this finale, are tied to the concept and things that are seeded throughout the return. That's why you get the stuff with him, Ben and Beverly about it, is to set it up, which is this idea that we are moving towards non-existence. We are moving towards completion. We are making the return journey through the negative path back to non-existence, right? So when Cooper goes through that door, he is going through that door to complete the return. Yeah, let's talk about Diane, all right? Before we talk about Judy, before we talk about Audrey, let's talk about Diane. They're all kind of... Diane's maybe the most important, honestly, but... Yeah, Laura fucking Dern. We finally in Twin Peaks. I mean, it was a long time coming. And I think right from the first time you see Diane, and that's really the first time you see her, it's all you do is see her, because it's just like towards the end of part 6, and you don't get anything more with her till the next episode. She's in the bar, and it's like, so right away you're drawn to her look, her wig, her nails, just the nature of her outfits. They're kind of out there. They're kind of something between some sort of retro 50s look, but like with this like sort of just
retro 50s neon hooker.
Retro 50s neon hooker. Okay. I'll allow it. It's notable.
In the most fun way, obviously. Laura Dern kills.
It's notable though, like when we're talking about Diane right here, and I'm going to continue to talk about her. We're talking about quote the quote Tulpa version. Because the real Diane we don't meet to the finale. Now, I'm going to assume that most of what I'm talking about with the Tulpa Diane, except where obvious, is the same as the quote real Diane. But that's just kind of the asterisk on that. So how do we see Diane? And to go along with the way you just described her look, she's immediately like registers as this femme fatale type, which is important to our archetypes, and like basically a cougar, because the whole thing is like, oh, she has sex with all these men, she has all these suitors.
Yeah, later on they say she has a harem.
She has a harem.
Harem of men.
A harem of men.
I'm like, okay, get it.
And again, if you think about what Diane's meant to me, which I don't remember if I've said anything to that effect yet, I think I did. The harem of male suitors makes a lot of sense, because it's basically an analogy to all her little wannabe Coopers, aka all the fans, all the fanboys of Twin Peaks, which I guess I'm one of. So yes, I would be happy to be part of the harem, though. That's true. So what does she do? We talked about this with the smoking. She loves to smoke. And this is, I think, more particular to the Tulpa Diane, obviously. She loves to smoke and let the black fire in, let that corruption in, let the sort of negativity of the dark magic of Mr. C kind of be inside her, unfortunately. I mean, she doesn't want that to be the case. It just is the case. And we get that great sort of meta scene with Gordon and be like, we used to smoke together. You remember that? Sure do, Gordon. Like... And you just get the sense that like
he gets
they're really reminiscing about all that, right? Well, no, she hands it to him. Yeah, she hands it to him, and he's like, takes one drag. He's like, wow, like as if David Lynch literally didn't just smoke a whole pack like 10 minutes before that. But you can tell he fetishizes it so much that he can really put himself in the head of like, oh my gosh, so good. Or maybe that day he like resisted the urge to smoke so that when he finally did get one, it was like heavenly or something to him. Anyway, obviously to go along with the smoking, she's also a heavy drinker. She's always drinking at the bar. She's always drunk, essentially. Now, that drinking and all that, I think is very important understanding what Diane's been through, but we'll save that for a moment. I'd also like to point out one of my beautiful favorite things, because it relates to the fact that I got the prediction of exactly who Laura Dern was going to play and exactly more or less who Naomi Watts was going to play down right from the gate, which is that Diane and Jane Evans, Diane Evans are sisters. They specifically says half sisters, but to my mind, that's more of like a almost like a like a Tulpa whataboutism in some ways, like, because it's my prime. The point is not that they're half sisters. The point is that they're sisters. So it's interesting though, given that connection, they never get a scene together. Obviously, that's a shame, but it's also because they can't have a scene together. Them having a scene together would literally like break the dream, essentially. And there's a reason, like, so like they give the in plot reason that they're estranged. Diane hates Janie, which makes sense. It's like, it kind of has a meta reading. It's like, oh, like, what are you like? You're like the new girl, I'm the old girl or something. But Janie, the reason I say it would break the dream is because Janie is to Diane what Dougie is to Cooper. Like, and not literally, I'm not saying Tulpa, but I'm saying like this in terms of the functionality, right? I guess when I say mean Cooper, and specifically in the return, I mean more even Mr. C, because we are mostly still talking about Tulpa Diane, though the original Coop Classic and red-haired Diane also fit together the same way. And it's like, in the case of Janie, she is the domestic but balanced with both a sweet side and a fierce side that we see in more or less equal measure version of Twin Peaks, that an accepting balanced Cooper, I'm not talking about balanced Cooper from part 18. I'm talking about the balanced Cooper that would be the Dougie Cooper had he chose the Dougie path instead of the path that he goes on, would represent. So that's why, again, the top of part 18 is just that Cooper returning to Janie E and Sonny Jim. That should have been the ending, but it wasn't then going to be an ending because that's not the ending we wanted. We didn't want that ending. And David Lynch is like, well, you're not going to get it. So there's that, but that's basically just kind of like an Elseworld now. And everything else has been moving in a very different direction. And it's notable that like when the reason I say this is because when Coop Classic comes back in part 15, he's immediately like, he wants to solve the mystery. He wants to get to Twin Peaks. He wants to gain the closure. He wants to pursue Judy. So his Diane, his Twin Peaks can never be Janie. So like that's left behind in this Tulpa sort of dream within a dream.
Yes.
Now that gets us to this idea of what is a Tulpa, which I want to definitely get into. So
Tulpa
talk, because it's a weird word. It's a word probably no one ever used or heard before this show. And it's like, you know, we get it from Tammy. She's like, wow, a real Tulpa. So Diane's Tulpa, it's notably different than Dougie's Tulpa. Because Diane's Tulpa seemingly has all the real personality and memories of the real Diane. Whereas Dougie's Tulpa, we don't directly know this, but it's implied / it can be assumed that Dougie Jones never remembered being Cooper or anybody else. I think what we're led to believe is that he like just came fully formed as an adult and had a sort of amnesia from a car accident that he never really had. And just went on with his life and presumably was being manipulated from he's being manipulated from the beginning, like put into like, you know, paired up with Jane so that there'd be like that symmetry there and all that. So it's interesting that, you know, that aside, the differences between Dougie and Tulpa, like what is a Tulpa? So the first Tulpa in terms of the lore, and this is what we learned from the conversation between Tammy and Albert, was this thing called the Case of Lois Duffy. And Lois Duffy says, I'm like the blue rose. And that's where the blue rose actually comes from. And it was apparently the person who said this was an identical woman to Lois Duffy who then disappeared after killing Lois Duffy. And that's, as Albert said, she did not have a twin sister, right? So the idea is that she was, quote, conjured a Tulpa. That's what Tammy says. Also
conjured a Tulpa.
Yeah. Also interesting note is when they say the detectives who were on this case, this is how this started, were Cole and Jeffrey. So this is like, again, the origin of the origin of the origin, right? Now, in the basic lore understanding there, when we take that origin into account, a Tulpa is a clone made in the Red Room or in another space between the two worlds, like the convenience store, because it's implied Diane was made in the convenience store, using a golden seed and some DNA. Remember what a golden seed is, an idea.
Right.
manufactured, quote, manufactured for a particular purpose, right? And they are
which is different than the golden orbs.
Different,
which is like when the little boy is hit by the truck and Carl goes over. Carl watches his golden orb leave his body, but it's not a seed.
No, so
it's like a cloud.
That was, you'll notice it was a little less gold, a little more yellow with a kind of a green in it too. That's Garmonbosia, or at least that's how I was explaining it before. That's Garmonbosia. That's the pain and suffering floating up into the power lines. The gold orb that you said is not a tulpa. I assume you mean the gold orb of Laura.
Yes.
And no.
It's an actual sphere rather than a cloud.
Yeah, but like yes and no. It's not a tulpa in the same, because what I'm about to explain is that there's a quote tulpa, and then there's the broader idea of a tulpa. And when you're talking about the broader idea, there's a lot of things that are tulpas, and there's tulpas within that's what I'm getting at. So yes. So just to be clear, talking about the basic tulpa, your Dianes and your Dougies, right? They're made from a golden seed and some DNA. That's why Cooper rips out his hair, manufactured for a particular purpose, made specifically in the Red Room or another space between the two worlds, like the convenience store. And they are separate and distinct from the doppelgangers of the Black Lodge, which is what Mr. C is, right? Or the arms doppelganger. They're not the same thing. But why the word tulpa is the real question. Like, what does David Lynch mean by tulpa? Well, from what I've been told, tulpa is essentially a word that means an imaginary friend. That's what a tulpa is, an imaginary friend. So it's like you would take an object like your water bottle and talk to it and be like, yeah, that's my friend George. Or like Wilson in Castaway is another example that's been used, right? So in this sense, think about this. Diane was always a tulpa in that sense. Because back in the original series, the only thing you knew of Diane was that she was basically the tape recorder. Cooper would just talk to the tape recorder and address Diane, but there was never a Diane person. So in other words, anything we might have imagined about Diane was just us imagining. And obviously, as I alluded to, in my real case, I actually did imagine Laura Dern. I imagined Laura Dern was the person that Cooper was talking to. And then, of course, she ended up being the person that talking to, which in some ways is a coincidence, but mostly there is no coincidences in Twin Peaks. So in other words, the whole idea of Diane itself is that in the return, in Cooper's dream, in our dream, she's given human form and full personhood. And she's our love. She is our love is Twin Peaks. So she is Twin Peaks itself, right? So the quote tulpa Diane, the one that we're getting for most of this, we know was the tulpa, the clone made by Mr. C. So she's really a tulpa of a tulpa in a sense. And it's this idea that that's Mr. C's version of her. And it's like, she's like not the whole purpose of her being a tulpa is that she's not quite the real thing, right? She's like this version that thinks it's herself, but isn't herself. That's why like when she's like screaming and crying towards the end, she's like, I'm not me, before, acting not like herself and trying to shoot Gordon. So this is where we have to talk about the big sort of
just really
thing.
Quickly on tulpas.
Yes.
So yeah, I had never heard of it before this either. I thought he made it and thought he made this word up, this term tulpa.
Apparently it comes from like a real term.
Yeah. And the real term divides tulpas into 3 types, which I think is interesting because we have 3 Coopers. Traditionally in like mysticism and ancient thought, the tulpas are either in the shape of the person who creates them. Mm-hmm. They form an object that may be ensouled by nature.
Yes.
And then
that was
there's
the one
another
I was referring to.
Yes. And there's the one that presents inherent qualities such as emotions. Mm-hmm. So those are the 3 categories of tulpas. And I think it's interesting that there are 3 Coopers.
Well, there's really more than 3.
There's probably a million.
There's 3
at least 3.
Well,
there's 3 for us.
Because no, there's more than 3. Because so to me, and we're going to talk a bit about that more in a moment, balanced Cooper, the final Cooper, Richard, is a very different Cooper than all the other Coopers, right? So you know, like that's a character onto himself. I mean, as much of a character onto himself as any of the Coopers is a character on themselves, because it's also the point that they're all Cooper. And the whole point of this Richard Cooper is that he is all those Coopers in one. Right. So,
right.
I mean, I get what you're saying, though. There's Dougie, there's Mr. C, and then there's Coop Classic. Those are the three we mainly think of. If you take a look at the Twin Peaks, The Return, like box set that I have, it's like it's basically this face is split in half between Dougie and Mr. C and Coop Classic, and then you open it up and then it reveals the third Dougie Cooper. Whereas if you look at the back, it's all golden lobe aura, because there's only one Laura. Laura is the one, right? But putting all that aside for a second, because I think it'll all become more clear and later on, we cannot talk about Diane without talking about the thing that makes Diane who she is, and the thing that will dictate the finale, because the past dictates the future. Diane is a victim of rape, and not just rape by anyone, rape by Cooper. Now you could say Mr. C, but this is exactly what I'm getting at. All Coopers are Cooper. Yeah.
Or a form of part of Cooper.
But
if we're going by the Tulpa thing, like it could be, you know, some form of deep emotions of our.
Well, okay, but like Mr. or C. If you want to see that, I don't want it to make it overly confusing for the listener, but I get what you're saying, because what I was getting at before was the idea that doppelgangers and tulpas are different, though technically they're really not.
Because tulpas are created by your energy and
in terms of the
and
lore,
I think doppelgangers just exist, right?
Doppelgangers just exist. They're not made. They always exist. But the idea is that the doppelganger represents your shadow self, right? So it is yourself. Cooper is Mr. C. Cooper, the most important thing you're supposed to get from the final two parts, and if you don't get this, I feel like you don't get anything, is that Coop Classic, the Cooper we've all been clamoring for, when he finally comes back, what does he want? He wants literally the same thing Mr. C wants. There's no real difference between the two. It's all aesthetic. It's all presentational. They both want Judy. They both have a plan to get Judy. They are going to find Judy. That's all they care about. They don't care about anything else. Nothing else matters, including Diane herself. Okay? So the true Diane, Twin Peaks herself, and notice how this Diane looks. It's black and white and red. It literally resembles the Red Room head to toe, right? With the red hair, etc. Going back to the Tulpa though for a moment, she has to, one of the first things we see Diane do after Gordon and Albert bring her in is they take her to the prison to see Mr. C. And this is before it's all spelled out. But again, like, it should be obvious if you're watching the scene. And I kind of knew where this was going well before they even got to the scene. I could sense it. I you know what I mean? So she gets there, and this is a scene of confrontation between victim and abuser. Like, you see her trying her best to kind of stand tall, to let them know, I'll never forget it. She yells at him to look at her, but it ultimately ends on this, who are you? And if you might remember,
well, he says, I'll never forget that night. And she goes, neither will I.
Neither will I. But, but
and then
notably,
she's like, who are you?
Well, when she says, who are you? What is that an echo of? When Laura said the same thing in reference to Bob. And I don't even want to talk about that scene, but you know the scene I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's holding the face and it's like, who are you? Right. So these are all very intentional connections. And it gets to this, these existential ideas behind the trauma that's going on here, which is this inability to really confront and recognize, no matter how hard you try, just really what it is that's happened to you and who you are. So in the aftermath of this scene, she immediately runs to vent to Gordon. And it's this thing where it's like, we have to kind of keep in mind the symbols and meanings that we've set up here. Cooper represents the audience. Diane represents the show. Gordon represents David Lynch. It's like the show crying to the director that the fans are not good to her. They're not who she wants them to be. Their relationship is not safe, right? And it's also notable too that, like, you know, Gordon's relationship to Diane is, he's not just anyone. This is an authority figure, an older male, someone that she trusts enough to lend a caring ear to, right? Despite all that. And it's this means to which it brings about this other thing, which, remember, when we think about Shelley and Red, or that this idea of like feeling powerless, being held in fear, and the fact that it allows you to be, quote, put under the spell. Because the Tulpa Diane is under the control, essentially, of Mr. C, despite the fact that Mr. C is the source of all her trauma and pain. And this is a very real and relatable thing, unfortunately, when you consider all the above, which is that the power a abuser or a rapist might still have over their victims, not in like this literal sense, but like in that sense of like they loom so large over their lives, right? Even if they hate them, they loom so large.
It's a very real trauma response for people to try to return to the source of trauma to get approval. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
like to go to the abusive person and be like, okay, this is the source of my trauma. This must be where I fix it. Mm-hmm. Where, I mean, in truth, if anyone out there's ever been in therapy or those kind of things, that's not actually how you typically fix this kind of trauma. It's inner work, looking into yourself and how things affect you. However, I do think that that's what's happening with Diane here in that sense. She's going back to the source of her trauma, thinking, this is my origin story. This is where I need to, find my conclusion.
Yeah. And then to that conclusion, when Diane finally breaks down and succumbs and attacks Gordon, it's like, it's only after she's able to finally vent this trauma. And I mean, it's disturbing, obviously, as it should be, but like, you know, Laura Dern's performance and the whole, you know, the he raped me line and the I'm not me line. It's interesting because I brought this up before, but, you know, the I'm not me to me makes me think of the fact that, you know, victims of sexual abuse not often, but have been known to develop multiple personality disorder.
Sure. Well, dissociative personality. Yeah, for sure. You have to dissociate yourself from trauma. Right. In order, it's like a survival, it's a coping mechanism. Yeah. So if I'm different, if I'm a different person than the person that experienced that trauma, then I'll be okay. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that's definitely spot on. Yeah.
So let's talk about Audrey then. Audrey was an attention seeker, right? That's what she was in the original show. She wanted Cooper's attention, as in she wanted our attention. She wanted to be on her own spin-off show. That's what Mahan Drive is really going to be. Now, Audrey, she's out of time. She lives in a house where everything is old. Old wood, old phone. She's married to Charlie, a little person, right? Who's very, very tired and sleep, very slow. He's time itself, right? Passing time in human form. Audrey fights with him because she wants to escape into the past and her future. She wants the Roadhouse to be on modern TV. That's why she talks about Bill and Tina and Paul that, because the character there, the modern trashy characters, she wants to be part of that show and be the center of it. But deep down, she knows it's not where she belongs. So she's scared to leave the house and can't bring herself to be there. So Charlie keeps asking her. She's like, she's ready to leave. She keeps falling, and Charlie threatens, I'll end your story. Because time can end us all, and end any story. Nothing beats time. So Charlie fill her in on the stories he hears on the phone, because he's trying to protect Audrey of truth, that she doesn't belong in them. Her time is past. She doesn't belong on this modern thing. And she mentions Ghostwood, which is one of her old plot lines. So this arrival at the Roadhouse, Eddie Vedder's playing the song No Sand, and it's like the hourglass is out. It's a song about mourning lost time and regret, the pain of nostalgia, right? Now it's gone. I am who I am. Who I was, I will never be again. Run out of sand. Audrey makes it as Vedder's finishing, and right away it's just like she wanted. All the attention comes back to her. They put her center stage. Despite they let her dance to her theme song until the trashy, violent modern TV just starts erupts, and that comes in, he's smashing, like, punches her. All of a sudden, Audrey, because she recognizes that she belongs in the roadhouse, rushes to Charlie, and what happens? She instantly snaps out, awakens in this white space in a kind of like a hospital gown, no makeup on. It obviously resembles kind of intuition, but it's not that literally, like everything else, symbol first, right? So it doesn't belong in the roadhouse anymore. Then it's like she doesn't belong anywhere. She kind of the only place left her is like this, the place where you go where you don't have any association or own identity anymore, right? The hospital. So this is why the Roadhouse patrons in part 14 talk about that literally. They mention Nut House. She's old, recognize herself anymore. She's confused. The credits then roll on that band playing Dance now in reverse. Is this the story of the little girl who lives down the lane? Because this line is mentioned as early as part 2, right? It's actually the arm in the form of the electric tree who says it first. He goes, now, the story of the little girl lives down a lane. Is it Laura Palmer's story? Is it Twin Peaks? Is the way we look at it. And that's where like Twin Peaks is, of course, where Audrey is from. It's where she belongs, but it's in the past. And this is now. Is it future or is it past? So the phrase itself, is this the story of the little girl lives down the lane, is in all likelihood a reference to a movie called The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane. It's a 1976 film starring Taxi Driver era Jodie Foster. So Jodie Foster in the movie plays, and this is what I'm about to say is literally the official description of the movie. Quiet, withdrawn 13-year-old Rin Jacobs, Jodie Foster, lives peacefully in her home in a New England beach town. Whenever the prying landlady, Alexis Smith, inquires about Rin's father, or is it Ryan? No, I think it's Rin. Rin's father, she politely claims that she is in the city on business, that he's in the city on business. But when the landlady's creepy and increasingly persistent son, Frank, played by Martin Sheen, won't leave Rin alone, she teams up with the kindly neighbor boy, Mario, Scott Jacoby, to maintain the dark family secret that she's been keeping to herself. So I have not seen this film. A lot of people have. I've not seen it. It's like kind of a lost classic or a lost cult film. Definitely going to check it out at some point. And I can't really get too much into all the parallels that might have to
But you think
Twin
that this
Peaks.
is a reference to that?
I think the phrase is a pretty unique phrase that it'd be weird if it was made with no awareness to this film. You know, I think either Lynch or Frost or both would have been aware of it. They were alive at the time. They know movies. So in other words, this idea, like the little girl lives on a, it's obviously Laura Palmer, whatever similarities you might think there are between the character that played by Jodie Foster and Laura Palmer. The point is the idea of girls who harbor secrets from the people around them, from their community, right? And these are, quote, dark secrets. So now let's talk about Judy.
Judy.
We have to talk about Judy. That's the only way to talk about the finale. You got to talk about Judy. So we are told right at the top of part 17, part 17H, or the 2-part finale, that Judy is an extremely negative force known in olden times as Jowday. Jowday is likely taken from the Mandarin word Jowdai. And Jowdai, I shit you not, means to explain. to explain, to make clear, to yes.
On the nose. There you go.
On the nose. Yeah, David Lynch doesn't mess around. It's also notably an inverse replacement kind of anagram, like a cipher for NATO, which is also in itself an inverse replacement cipher for Diane, because Diane is actually NATO, right? So you got NATO, and this relies on pronunciation, like the Japanese way of pronunciating these things. NATO Daude, right? So Judy is the anti-Twin Peaks. So therefore, she is the anti-Diane. So there is that setup between NATO and Judy that's kind of like, they both are like faceless. They're kind of like making weird animal sounds. There's like all sorts of things, right? Now, what Judy represents, as we've talked about, is this idea of the explanation, the closure, the just giving away that will unravel the mystery and upset the balance of Twin Peaks. So when the agent says, when the fireman says in the very first part, and then Gordon Cole repeats that Cooper told me he was going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right? That's also what the fireman says to Cooper in the beginning. 2 birds, 1 stone, right? It's the idea that what the return is it's getting closure in the form of this dream of the return, so that we could ultimately wake up from that dream. And getting that is that's what David Lynch wants. So in other words, what David Lynch wants and what we want are both achievable through the same path. It's 2 birds, 1 stone. So that's what we're going to get. Although obviously these two things are certainly from the perspective of most fans are in conflict, which is why the ending was not very welcomed by a lot of people. But as we also talked about, what Judy also is the dark within Sarah Palmer. So let's talk about just very briefly what happened with Sarah Palmer and what we see throughout the return, because it's really important framing this force, right? And what we ultimately end this show on. She's riddled with alcoholism. All she does is go to buy the store to get more vodka for her and Bloody Mary mix. That's all she does is drink that.
She was even frustrated that they only had 3 bottles.
Only 3 bottles. That's not enough.
She looks for down.
Well, she later goes to the bar because she just ran out and can't go to the grocery store because it's not presumably open. So she also is wildly agitated by the fact that the beef jerky is different, which I don't think is anything significant about the beef jerky so much as it's significant about the most minor changes feel really rattle her, right?
Well, it wasn't even that it was the beef jerky, but it was the placement. Why is it there? By the way, I just want to let you know that grocery store is my grocery store.
Is it really?
That's where I buy all my groceries. It's in Burbank.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That makes
it's a little family owned. They're the nicest. It's like super small, family owned grocery store in Burbank. And they, I don't know if anybody's ever around in Burbank. On Saturday mornings, they do smoked meats and it's delicious.
Well, that's literally what she asked. She goes, is it smoked?
Yeah. They make smoked meats there on Saturdays.
Because that's the other thing why it agitates her is like this. She's obsessed with smoke. She's like, just wants the smokiness. She's like, needs to know that smokiness is around her at all times, right? Because where there's smoke, there's fire. She then flips out and she specifically said,
I forgot to tell you the name. It's called the Handy Market. The Handy Market in Burbank. If anybody wants barbecue.
All you Twin Peaks tourists, and there are many of them. Twin Peaks tourism is like a huge part of the fandom.
Is it really? Would they want to go to the Handy Market grocery store?
Yes, any shooting location gets stalked. Yes, absolutely.
Well, so I noticed it when she walks down the aisle in the very back. You see something and it says NK Market, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the Burbank. That's my market.
I gave it away.
Well,
there you go. So Sarah literally starts flipping out, screaming. She's like, something happened to me. And she said, things can happen. Like, it's this sense of like, just total like disassociation and confusion and anger, right? This is very important because this happens publicly. Okay. The result of this is Hawk, who we love Hawk. We like Hawk. We respect Hawk. But Hawk is still a law enforcement agent. Knocks on her door. He's like, everything okay, Sarah? And Sarah just meets him with kind of just contempt, like, oh, I know why you're here. Yeah. And
probably what happened at the grocery store.
Yeah, but she knows right away. And she's just very contemptuous, like, get the hell out of here. She doesn't want to let him in to poke around, but he notices a few things. He's like, and we see him. What do we see? We see the fan.
The fan immediately.
Fan is spinning. Like, that's one of those symbols where I know most people, unless they've been following along with us or other people that understand this stuff, don't understand what the fan is about. But at the same time, everyone knows about the fan because it's shown so much. It's clear to anybody with 2 eyes that David Lynch wants to draw our attention to this fan. Okay? Fan, and then noises, weird just noises in the background.
In the kitchen. He hears something.
He's like, is someone in there? She's like, nothing. It's nothing. And
it's
like
something in the kitchen.
Right. But this is the idea. Something's in the house. It is in our house now. Right. This is why we end on the house, because what did I say? Sarah's an embodiment of Judy. So is the house. It's white. It was dark
on the
within.
outside.
White on the outside, dark within. Okay.
It's like a stormtrooper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, remember that Return of the Jedi David Lynch almost directed? You would have had a lot of fun with that. So
I would have had a lot of fun.
Then you have the scene where she goes to the Elk Bar. Maybe there's a significant to Elk Bar name. I'm sorry, I don't know. Maybe that's one thing that I didn't give a lot of thought to, but I don't know.
It's not
there's
the Bang
so much
Bang
there.
Bar, it's the other bar.
Yeah. So it's this place where she's confronted by this violent, aggressively misogynistic man, right? Who's literally, what does t-shirt say? Truck you, the world of truck drivers. It's a world of truck drivers out there. So it's, what happens is the darkness within her, she's just now kind of reckless with it, can't be contained. It's grown so much. So behind those white eyes, Judy is there. And when she lifts open the face, right? The same thing we saw Laura did. When Laura lifted up the face, the pure white blue light comes out. The light of the TV, the light of the investigation, the shining the light into the darkness hits at Cooper's face. When Sarah opens her face, it's dark within, and we see the smile. The smile is actually taken from Laura's portrait. So it's Laura's smile removed into this twisted monster. And you notice they show the hand in there, and the hand is a black left middle or ring finger. Its spirit mound is black. So all those symbols that we've been adding up to are all present here. I want to draw your attention to a line from the song, the 9 Inch Nails song, She's Gone Away, that plays in part 8, right? Goes, a little mouth open side. Yeah, I was watching on the day she died. We keep licking while the skin turns black. I mean, there you go. It's all right there. So she also has this snake tongue. And all of a sudden she like rushes in and bites this guy's neck right out. And notice how she behaves afterwards when the bartender's like, what the hell happened? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
She's just like acting very unconvincingly shocked and then makes veiled threats towards him. Like, this is because Sarah, her soul is completely blackened from the whites of her eyes. All she is now is this human vessel for Judy. And this idea of it's in our house now, that the Palmer house is Judy. This is where all the looking away all went down. And now others look away from it too. The Palmers, writ large, you notice how the lawn is all like messed up too. The Palmers are ignored. Or when I say the Palmers, I mean just Sarah, but just the specter that there were 2 other members of the Palmer family that are nowhere to be found, right? They're ignored. Everyone in the town ignores her. Hawk occasionally checks in on her when there's something reported to the police station. But otherwise, you get the impression no one's calling Sarah. Nobody's checking in on her. Nobody's wondering about her. No one's talking to her. She's completely isolated, left alone. It's not merely a self-imposed isolation. It's the isolation that happens all the time. We see people who are troubled. We see people who need help, and we do what they did. We look away. So Sarah may have gotten to where she gotten to because of the whites of her eyes, but now she is our whites of our eyes looking away, and we're letting the darkness within. We're letting the darkness within Twin Peaks grow and linger when we ignore Sarah and her house, right? And that's the sickness in the air. And I wonder
if that gets to an extreme with not Laura. Do you know what I mean? Like she doesn't. Well, yeah. Let's yes, because she doesn't even. She says, "I don't recognize this house."
So yeah, let's. I
wonder, did she look away? Yeah, did she look away? I mean, for so long that she literally forgot, or did she really not know that she was a tulpa or have those memories until she was there again?
No. Well, let's talk about Diane's shadow, and that'll bring us right into Carrie Page. So the whole thing is Cooper comes out. He's awakened from the dream now. So Balance Cooper is awake from the dream, and he's right where he was left off. the end of the finale, 25 years, the whole thing, right? The circle has been complete now 2 times over.
I'll see you
the
in
return
25
is complete,
years. Yeah.
right? He walks out, and who does he meet? Diane, the real Diane, aka Twin Peaks. It's exactly where he left it. It's exactly where we left it, which means it's not in the present. It's in the past. So when Cooper walks out into Glastonbury Grove, you don't get any direct signs of this necessarily, but trust me, it's 1990 still. He's still in 1990. No, or 1991, I should say. 1991. And Diane's like, he's kissed her, like, it's like, you remember everything? She's like, yes. What does he then do? He takes her and they're in a car. Notice how the car is a very old-timey car. And he's like, we've driven out exactly 430 miles, 430. This is seemingly an arbitrary number. And that's the point.
And they're in the middle of nowhere, just with some power grid.
Right.
You know?
Well, the power lines are important, obviously. Yes. But the idea is
nothing there. Power lines, no houses, no stores, no people.
Nothing near there. And I know where the real location is for that. It's kind of way out in the middle of California. It's crazy. But it's this idea that they are at the threshold. What is the threshold? The point in which the past becomes the present. So if they cross this threshold, they will go from the past into the present day, meaning from 1991 to 2017. Mm-hmm. And so the 430 miles represents the 25 years it would take to travel to the future, right? Now, Diane is like very nervous, and Cooper kind of keeps pushing because this is balanced Cooper. He's very assertive. He's like, no, we need to do this. But he's like, kiss me because it could all be different.
It could all be different. Yeah.
Right. Because so in other words, balanced Cooper recognizes that it could be all different, but it still doesn't stop him. He's too obsessed, right? And the reason he's too obsessed, he doesn't make it explicit, is because he needs to be in the present so he can be with his love in the modern day, which is Diane, but also get Judy, because that's the only thing he really knows how to do. So Diane, they pull up to a hotel after they cross, because when they cross, it all of a sudden turns night. They pull up to a motel. And of course, because Diane's his lover, he wants to sleep with his lover. He brings her in. And this is, remember, Cooper, he wants to consummate this relationship now that they're in the present day. It's like, we've made it. Let's consummate it here. And the truth starts to come out. Notice how Diane sees that, I'm going to say doppelganger, but I don't mean literally in the Twin Peaks sense of herself. That's her shadow, which you could say is doppelganger. It's that, remember the song Shadow, and think about the lyrics, right? So it's her way of recognizing that she doesn't recognize herself anymore, because she's now been disoriented from where she's been. She's no longer in the place she's familiar with. He comes in, and this is a really disturbing sex scene for a reason, because this is her. Because remember, not only is all Cooper's, but balanced Cooper specifically is equal parts Mr. C to anybody else, right? This is her having sex with her rapist. I mean, to put it quite bluntly.
Well, and you get that in her body, in her choice of body movements. And I'm sure that this was directed by Lynch to do this. It's very specific.
You can watch him direct this scene, actually.
But covering his face with her hands.
Right. So
that obviously is super, super important for her character. Like, she can't even look at him. She covers his face and she looks away. She covers his face and looks away. She needs to feel. She feels the need to do both.
She feels the need to do both, but it's because she can't look at him. Absolutely. It's also that she can't bear him to look at her. Right? Because for him, for us to see her is to see her as a version of herself that she doesn't recognize anymore. And note what song plays. My Prayer, the same song from part 8. And because, like, similar thing, that song was the command to fall asleep. Everything is all right. Just like in dreams. It was the song to say everything in heaven is fine. Just like in Eraserhead. It was the song to say that, it's every little star. It's like, don't worry, Hollywood and everything else. This is what David Lynch keeps going to with these songs. It's this idea that the 50s, don't pretend everything is fine. It's averting your eyes. Avert your eyes so you fall into slumber and you don't see Diane's shame, Diane's pain, Diane's confusion. And it also represents Cooper's, our selfish wish to be alone with her. That's what the line is like. It's like, my prayer is to linger with you at the end of the day, in the dark of the night. Like, we just want her all to ourselves. We want her all to ourselves alone, but she can't even look at us. And so what happens the next day? This is where we get Richard and Linda. She leaves a note, and she's just like, please don't try to find me. I don't recognize you anymore. What we had is over. Mm-hmm. So Cooper, the reason the note signed Linda to Richard is because where they are now in the present, on a different plane of dream existence, the dream outside of the dream that we've been in, is they are too close to another threshold, the threshold of reality itself, which is why everything in this is so much more dry and realistic than it was in our Twin Peaks, right? This is Judy's world. It's a world with no Twin Peaks, which is why when he's driving around, and notice how as soon as he gets out of the hotel, it's a different hotel, different car. The car is no longer an old-timey car. It's a modern car. And he drives around. The first thing he sees, Judy's diner with a little white horse outside. I think no matter where he would always see Judy, because Judy is everywhere in this world, and all he wants to do is find Judy. So he goes there. He immediately understands. He fucks up these guys because he's balanced Cooper. He's like, just kind of take charge, all action. Now he meets Carrie Page. And I think you had it just right in the sense that Carrie Page is reality's idea of Laura, because there is no Laura, because there is no Twin Peaks. We're as close to reality as we can get, but there's always Laura's, and Carrie Page is just a Laura, meaning a person, a woman in trouble, living with violence in their home. So when it's in our house now, when he goes up to Carrie's house, what's happened? There's a dead guy in the house and a little white horse statue. And when Cooper looks at the dead guy, he immediately looks away and sees the white horse statue. He's averting his eyes from the dead guy, because even though he's an FBI agent, even though he should be very concerned about this, he doesn't ask any of those questions. He doesn't care. He only cares about taking her back to the house to find Judy. Notice how the way Carrie Page, played by Cheryl Lee, obviously resembles Laura, is and isn't at the same time, to answer your question. She's not a Tulpa. She's not a doppelganger. She's just the only thing that remains of Laura in a world where Laura doesn't exist, right? Because, like I said, there's always Laura's. So she doesn't react when she says Laura Palmer, doesn't react when she says Twin Peaks, doesn't react when she
sees the house.
Well,
not initially.
Before we even get to the house, right? Not initially. Sorry, when Cooper's talking to her at her own house back in El Paso.
Oh, okay, yeah.
She doesn't react to anything except Sarah's name. She's like, Sarah? She gets all nervous when she sees Sarah. Why? Because Sarah's Judy. And it's this recognition that Judy is the one thing that even in this existence can still kill her, can still harm her, right? So, but Cooper doesn't care about that. He ignores all that. So finally, after a very long drive through the night, at night we're driving in your car pretending that we'll leave this town, right? We finally reach it, the house of the little girl who lived down the lane. Who lives there now? Alice Tremont. Alice Tremont is played by the actual present day real life owner of that house.
Oh, really?
Yes. And
well, that actually makes sense. Instead of why wouldn't you just get her to it if she was decent on camera?
But oh, by the way, I mean, we mentioned this. This was the scene that leaked. This was the scene. So literally the only thing I knew was this scene for years before this came out. And it was crazy because they filmed it at night on the actual street at the actual house. And the reason is because, like I said, the reason the real life person who lives there is because we are at the edge of reality and Twin Peaks. We are at the edge of the dream and real life. Who is the dreamer, right? Who lives inside the dream, all that stuff with the Monica Bellucci dream, right? That Monica Bellucci dream was David Lynch's way of communicating to us that there's this edge line that we can get a lot closer to between the reality and the dream. And so we are at the edge now. So it's the real life woman, but we're still technically in the dream. And the reason we know this is because Alice, the name, Alice Tremont. Tremont is the last name of the grandmother of the magician. Remember when Donna first goes to visit? Yeah, Mrs. Tremont.
Yeah.
In Fire Walk with Me.
On Wheels.
So here's what's interesting. So when Cooper asks her who owned the house before you, she says Chalfont. Chalfont is
she's got to ask her husband. She says,
got to ask her husband off screen.
She got to ask her husband.
I think that might be her real husband, or it might just be David Lynch off camera yelling stuff to her. I don't know. I can't tell. But either way, the Chalfont is the name the grandmother had in Fire Walk With Me. This is like a little bit of Twin Peaks trivia. The grandmother changed her name in Fire Walk With Me, even though technically it's a prequel. So technically Chalfont came first, which is why Chalfont was the name of the previous owner and Tremont's the name of the current owner, right? So the Chalfont, the old lady, changed her name to Tremont in the original series. This is because, and who's the grandmother? She's the grandmother of the magician. So it's the magician's last name too. Who's the magician? David Lynch. So in other words, she's Alice Tremont, Alice Chalfont, because even though this is the real person, this is still the magician's dream. He's still the one in control. So here's what happens. Obviously, there's no recognition from Carrie Page. Cooper's just confused. They walk down the steps. He goes, "What year is it?" The last line of dialogue, right? And
yeah,
the "what year is it" to me, it's all symbolic of the horror of this Cooper. And I don't mean because he's balanced Cooper. I mean because Cooper is us, because of Cooper himself and us. Why? Why the fuck are we doing this? Why are we putting a victim? Because that's the thing. She doesn't know this. Carrie Page doesn't recognize herself as Laura. We do. Why are we bringing her to this house
of trauma? Yeah.
Why would we do that? Because we're so fucking craven and obsessed with Judy that we would be willing to do that we don't care. And so, like, what year is it? It's like, why are we pretending that it's 1990? It's not, it's 2017. And with that, we get the screen. This is the house of pain and suffering. No light. The light goes out. Because no Twin Peaks, no light, no investigation, no catharsis or relief for Laura. The angels don't come and save her in this reality. That never happened. All of Fire Walk With Me has been undone. There's no blue light. It's like, this is what you've done. This is what non-existence actually feels like and looks like. And all that remains is the voice of the mother who averted her eyes, Judy. That's why you hear Sarah's voice. Laura, all of a sudden, it all just rushes back, and all that fucking pain is let out, because it's not just the pain of it. It's the pain of the horror of realizing that it's been left in the dark in that house, not exposed, no introspection, no confrontation, no balance. And how we actually end is not the scream, but the whisper. And what is the whisper? The whisper is the whisper it's always been. I mean, the extra reaction from Cooper tells me only one thing about it. It was given the extra bit, or the bit that always was there, that would have been there if David Lynch was in charge and he was allowed to do what he wanted, which is to say, you want to know the truth, you're going to hear the whole truth. My father raped me nearly every night since I was 12 before he finally killed me. There you go. There's your answer. Answer's right there. It's there. Yeah. It's done. You didn't need any of this to get that answer. You already knew, but that wasn't the answer you wanted to hear, right? So Cooper's horror is the horror we have when we're like, ew, I don't like Fire Walk With Me. I'd rather, can we just, go do something else? And to David Lynch, that's like,
looking away.
That's you're failing. You're doing the thing I'm trying to tell you not to do. So we're going to go through this, kill two birds with one stone. I'm going to give you what you think you want, but also make my point to show you that you didn't actually want it. And at the same time, I'm going to secretly show you what you could have had, which is the Dougie storyline, but you also don't think you want that. Though, to be fair, I think David Lynch has really killed three birds with one stone, because I don't know, most fans I talk to love Dougie, and that's a good thing.
I also like Dougie. My favorite sex scene of all time.
Yes. I wanted to talk to you about that.
The floppy arms on the bed.
The floppy arms on the bed.
I still am. It's incredible.
Oh, by the way, isn't that so great? When Naomi Watts, remember we talked about it last Mulholland Drive week, we were like, she was like, "Oh, I'm glad that's on film," and I was like, "Oh," because I'm like, You should be glad this is on film too.
You should be glad this is the funniest sex scene of all time.
It's the funniest sex scene on time. So yeah, but I'm glad to release the laugh here. But that's the thing. The conclusion here is we go from the scream back down to the whisper, and that's it. The story is over. It's complete. The return is complete, which means the whole is complete. It's all one big full circle. Positive, negative, complete. Now, that's why I don't think there ever will be a season 4, nor should there be. I don't know how you feel about it. I mean, look.
No, what are you going to put in season 4? I mean,
nothing.
You're just going to end up tying up more loose ends, which that?
We've lost a lot more actors, as I keep pointing out.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, I don't know what people want. And look, if it does come in,
you know what, Marcus? I don't think people know what people want. So
I think David Lynch knows that people don't know what they want. And that's again why he did what he did. He's like, oh, right. Sorry, I meant to say this to you before. This is really important. What actually happens in the Ed, Norma, Nadine thing is Nadine comes to Big Ed and she goes, it's like, Ed, you can go be with Norma now. And Ed said, Nadine, you're not talking sense. You're going to regret this tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I won't. I walked all the way over here. I could have turned back at any time. And that's like representative, like the 430 of the 25 years it took for fans to get to the point where the return's here. And David Lynch is like, okay, but if I'm with Norma, I'm gonna be with Norma. You understand? It's gonna be my way. Like, and we're like, okay. So that's what it is. And now this brings up the question and that kind of the end to Lynchtober. It's like, what's next for Lynch? He hasn't made anything since. There's been some rumors, he made that monkey short. Did you ever see that? What's up with Jack?
I didn't, but didn't he also direct with the singer from San Antonio, from my hometown, who plays the sexy agent? He directed a video about music and love with her, where she's in it.
Huh.
I can't remember the name of it right now. I got to think of the name of it.
I don't know. But yeah.
Christabel is a singer from my hometown, San Antonio.
That's Tammy.
Shout out San Antonians. Yeah, Tammy, of course.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Yeah.
Tammy.
Okay. Yeah,
So
no, he's always making
Tammy
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they did something. It's called David Lynch and Christabel, Bird of Flames, a short film.
Bird of Flames, I like that.
But she also, after Twin Peaks came out, had a song called The Blue Rose.
Oh yeah, I don't think I've heard
which obviously
that.
must have been approved by Lynch. I mean,
I'm sure he wrote it. I'm sure he wrote the song.
She's his muse. Yeah, but it's called Blue Rose, and so check it out. It's pretty cool.
I definitely will, and everyone else check that out. But yeah, other than that, in terms of what's next for Lynch in a potential film or TV project, he has some deal with Netflix, but nothing's directly that we know of's come of it. Right now, he's been mainly doing his weather reports on YouTube and the day's number, which I also highly recommend if you just want to hear David Lynch's voice every morning.
What?
You don't know about this?
No, I've literally never
I feel like it's so funny that I've gone the entirety of Lynchtober and not mentioned that every morning I wake up and watch David Lynch read me the weather.
What?
Yeah.
The weather for where?
Report. It's on his YouTube channel every day.
But is it the weather for LA?
For LA.
Oh my God, you're kidding.
No, it's beautiful and sunny out. It's going to be high in the 90s.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
God, watch it. And every day has a number.
Do a lot of people watch it?
Like, yeah, a couple thousand every day.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Yep. He started doing it last year during the pandemic.
Why? Oh, just because you had a pandemic boredom?
Pandemic boredom, yeah, basically.
Well, it was either, to be fair, people would probably still log on and watch if he was reading a phone.
Well, to be honest,
the weather is a little more relevant.
I should give it a little bit more than that. It's honestly the same reason that Twin Peaks is the way Twin Peaks is. He's trying to bring good feeling back into the world because no matter what the weather is, he's like, have a great day. And he's like, today I'm reminded of a song, Hey Jude, written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney, performed by the Beatles. And he does that every time.
Oh, David Lynch, what a treasure.
What a treasure. Total treasure.
Oh my goodness.
So
that is so cute.
I really hope we,
I don't need this weather app. Wait, is there a way that I can make my weather app sound like David Lynch's?
Honestly, it would be amazing if they just made a full-blown David Lynch weather app. I think I would love that. Yeah, well, David Lynch has a weird
anyone's
idea
listening who knows how to do that.
Yeah, that's true.
Two users, all right here.
Yeah, no, I imagine everyone who watches it on YouTube would do it, and maybe even more people because they'd be even more cool. But look, so David Lynch hasn't made anything since the return of significant length, I should say. But what is the return? And like, as kind of alluded to, it might be the last major work of his, and if it is, I think it's worth noting that it, as well as the whole of Twin Peaks, or most specifically the whole of Twin Peaks, because like I said, the return now is a fundamental piece. They're separate in a lot of ways, but they're also completely not separate. They're interdependent. To me, it's like the original isn't complete without it. And quite literally, it's by design. It's the return path, right, to make the whole circle full. And I feel that Twin Peaks, whether you want to say, compare to Mulholland Drive in whatever way, it's an utter masterpiece and an astonishing achievement that defies all understanding of reality in my mind. And I think, to answer the question I proposed at the beginning, yes, I genuinely, to whatever authority I have to say something like this, I genuinely consider it to be one of the greatest pieces of American art ever produced. I really do. It's an exploration of the human condition, our worst pain and sins, our deepest joys and triumphs, side by side, balanced, exactly what he's been trying to do this whole career, and he did it here. And honestly, I don't know, Dana, like, you don't have to give the same level of praise, but like, where does it really feel to you?
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I do think that it's that Lynch.
If I've won.
This is not, in my opinion, not the flavor for every person.
No,
I think that this type of what you just said and that type of understanding requires a patient viewer, requires a studious viewer. And I think for those of us that are willing to do the work, you will reap the rewards time and time again, because Twin Peaks is the gift that keeps on giving. I'm sure that I'll watch it a third or a fourth time and get more out of it than we got in our hours of study and in my first time watching it. And I think for that, it is a masterpiece. Absolutely. There are so many twists and turns, and you go through the gambit of emotions. You are devastated. You are hopeful. There are moments where you are joyous and happy, genuinely, for the characters. And I mean, for me, I found a lot of that in Norma and Ed, for sure.
Well, yeah, we didn't talk about it, but like that, I think I sent it to you as a meme photo, but like, I think about it all the time. The fucking face of Shelley with the coffee pot when she sees it. I mean, it's obviously meant to be a stand-in for everybody, but that's the point. Yeah. It's like, I think, and I hope fans who maybe don't understand or agree with a lot of what I said, at the very least, are happy that this happened. Not literally necessarily for that moment, but though, if you're happy most of all, or only entirely, literally for the moment I'm referring to, all power to you. But that moment, as we talked about, is symbolic of the entire endeavor. It's like, this is David Lynch's labor of love. I think that's why it is as amazing as it is. And for me, I mean, the show being that what it is one thing, but it's also just gets back to the whole thing where the start. To the day I die, I will never, ever forget Laura Palmer or what she's meant to me. And I think we're all blessed to have gotten to know her, to see her. And I thank you to Cheryl Lee. Thank you to David Lynch. Thank you to Mark Frost. Thank you to Kyle MacLachlan. Like, thank you to everybody, living or dead, who made this dream a reality. Because I think that's what I'm saying. I think when I say it's like this, one of the greatest pieces of American art ever produced, I say it because I know, like, if you read the book that I brought up at the beginning of the first Twin Peaks episode earlier last month, Laura's Ghost, and you read the testimonials in there, you know that this has had a tremendous impact on people. And I mean, I think that's evidence with just the Twin Peaks fandom itself. Like, I think we now live in a world of oversaturated fandom, and like, I'm fine with it because I'm one of those people, but I also, it does bother me when I feel like there's a shallow fandom. I mean, by all means, everyone have fun and enjoy yourselves. But the reason I do the pod that I do with you, Dana, is because I'm trying to create something where people maybe are invited to consider these things, investigate them a little further, which is very fitting in the team of Twin Peaks, because I think to you, what you just said, and I think what you said was so beautiful, Dana, really, because that's how I want people to feel. I want them to feel when they come back to it, they're going to get more out of it, and that there is more to get out of it. And it's the gift that keeps giving, because there's a lot to it. And that's why in general, I'm just so glad that we did Lynchtober. And yes, this is the end of Lynchtober 2021. We'll be back next year. We'll be back next year. But okay, Dana, any closing thoughts for Twin Peaks or Lynchtober?
It's been a crazy ride.
Yeah, let me tell you, man, it's been one of the great rides of my life thus far. So thank you, Dana, for just
been very fun.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I've gained so much knowledge and insight, and I've had so much fun. And obviously, the pod continues.
Stay tuned for Cinphomaniac. Like, subscribe. Find us on all the podcast services. If you're hearing this, you're already doing one of those things. So just make sure you keep doing it. I'll give you the big Cooper thumbs up. Big Cooper thumbs up. I'm doing the Cooper smile.
Classic.
I am the FBI.